Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how CEOs, founders, and senior executives sell their ideas, point of view, and personal brand to the people who matter most. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want to build market eminence, amplify your influence, and attract high-value prospects, investors, partners, talent, and media opportunities with less chasing and more confidence. Let's go. My next guest, Mr. Chris LaFay of ClassicCity.com. That's right. We are building websites in 2025, 2026, 2027. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, man. Been building websites for a long time.
So we're going to talk about the latest and greatest 2026 edition of what you are helping your clients with. Before we get to that, tell us the Chris LaFay story. What is it that brought you to the work that you're doing today, and what were some interesting pit stops along the way?
Yeah, so back in middle school, actually elementary school, Harry Potter was all the rage at this point, like in terms of like reading and whatnot. And actually, hold on. For the people that are watching, rather than buying Harry Potter, I found this book, which if you're not watching this and listening to it, says make your own web page, basically for kids. And I somehow found that book at my elementary school book fair back in the day. And that's what I purchased instead of Harry Potter. And I think that makes me a cool kid and going against the flow of what everybody else thinks was cool.
Let's hear it for the Scholastic book fairs.
100%. I normally leave that detail out. The Scholastic element of that, 100% Scholastic.
No.
Yes. And so did that in elementary school. In middle school, I met this awesome teacher. His name was Rod Hames, and he started up a web club in middle school for me and like two of my friends to learn how to code. It was an after school thing. That's how I got started. Was I basically just sat in this guy's room and learned how to code. And by the way, I still hang out with him. He does all this entrepreneur stuff now. One of the biggest people of impact in my life. And zooming forward, it started basically this whole freelancer route for me. I was in high school. I started making a little bit of side money going into college. I got a semi-regular part-time job at a company that I worked at all 4 years of college, collected some clients on the side, did some work with my brother who got really more into kind of the print marketing side of things, and slowly but surely just kind of tacked on clients. I met a lot of consulting companies back in the day, and I was kind of the unicorn web person who could do design, development, project management. And so if an agency that didn't really do web stumbled upon a web project, they basically said, "Oh, hey, we got Chris over here. He just do all of it." And so that just slowly grew into an agency. And I woke up one day and pinched myself and was like, "Oh, we're making money, and the company is actually putting food on the table for a lot more people than I ever would have expected." We've really been officially a company since 2016. And right now we specialize in building intricate WordPress sites for complex organizations.
Yes. So going back, I'm just curious because I'm nerdy this way. When you started out, what tool were you using? Was it Adobe something? Was it Microsoft Front Page? What the hell was it?
Oh man. Okay. So having to like go back into the archives. So Microsoft Front Page 100% was the tool of choice for a while. That bled into Dreamweaver.
Yeah.
After a minute, because, why use a Microsoft product when Macromedia had Dreamweaver? But then when I got my first job right out of high school, the one that I kept throughout college, I'm still floored to this day that I even got it, because I walked into that interview for a web developer job with a portfolio of not just Flash-based websites. They were Flash websites. They compiled to Flash, but I used a wacky third-party tool called Swish to build them. So anybody in the web industry around the 2008 timeframe, if you've heard of Swish, you've officially dated yourself along with me.
There's so many things, and this we're starting to open the door to websites in 2025 and 2026. There are still to this day all-in-one agencies, right? It's like, yeah, we do websites, we do SEO, we do print, we do design, we'll make your logo. And those jack of all trade shops, the argument could easily be made, they're okay at everything, they're not really great at anything. So you decided websites, 1000%, this is your drop dead specialty, you and the team. When did you have that aha that all these other kind of Swiss Army knife agencies were dropping the ball on websites, and that you could really niche down and be truly great at doing that one thing?
So about 4 years ago, we started dabbling in a lot of other areas. It was all done with really good intentions because I never wanted to be an all-in-one marketing agency. That wasn't my goal. And the reason I felt more confident in the direction that we were going 4 years ago was that I didn't have all these full-time employees. I had highly skilled and specialized contractors that have been doing these various different marketing tasks for a long time. And I was like, hey, if I can just pair up a project manager who can organize and structure these creatives, and really all a client needs is somebody that's really good at managing their Google Ads account or creating their brand messaging and whatnot. Those folks, typically speaking, are not the most organized and structured individuals. So if I can pair a project manager up with these people, we're now able to actually do a lot of this stuff at an expert level and actually organize it well within our own systems. Yeah. So I thought that by going at it at that angle, that more nimble collective style angle would have worked. And it didn't. And at the end of the day, the reason why I feel like it didn't wasn't because we weren't executing well. I feel like the handful of things that we did them with excellence. But it was harder for us to tie back that work to longer term ROI. So we just didn't have that strategic piece that kind of tied all the loose ends together. So if we were doing a little bit of PPC, a little bit of web, and a little bit of brand, that each of them individually was good. But the story that was told of how it all ties together and actually elevates the company as a whole, that part wasn't done because we're doing so many things in silos. Yeah. And that's where it failed. And that's when I realized, we started losing one client, and then 5 months later we lost another one. And it wasn't that we got good reviews where everybody was like, hey, this is all great, but we just don't need it anymore. Yeah. And that was kind of the realization of the thing that all of our clients say that they came to us with their first request was websites, and their last requests were always websites. And so realizing that fully, we decided to just not market any of those things anymore and not do them. And so WordPress is our specialty. We have a sidebar hustle doing some Shopify stuff, which has been going fantastic over the last year. And so web design, web development, 100%.
Hey now, what a great episode, right? Are you ready to build your own Market Eminence game plan using the power of speaking, publishing, and podcasting? Book a chat with me to build your plan and see if and how I might help you further. The link is doitmarketing.com/call. No sales team, no pressure, no goofballs, just you and me having a CEO to CEO chat about what's possible for you and your company. Hop on with me, doitmarketing.com/call. And now, let's jump right back into the interview. Now, when people hear, and you are such a great marketer of this, but when people hear web design agency, the first thing that might pop in their head is, God, There must be a million of those. That's a totally commoditized business. And again, I'm laughing because the people that are actually your prospects don't think this way at all. The average person on the street, doesn't GoDaddy do websites? Can I go to Wix.com? Can I just do a little do-it-yourself, throw up a one-pager and be done with it? So from that to AI-based website builders to all the other commoditized companies, you have done something so absolutely, actually not one thing, probably a half a dozen things, so brilliantly. And I want to start with the first thing, which is the vibe check. Tell us about what is the Chris LaFay Classic City Vibe Check, and how did you think to do something so cool and so smart? But first of all, what is it?
We don't like to beat things around the bush. It's like, so if you were to look at our homepage right now, and who knows, this is going to ever change, because at the end of the day, websites are supposed to change. Yeah. So when you're listening to this, whether it's when it launches or, a year or two later, if it's still the same, we're probably doing something wrong. But anyway, with that being said, is I wanted our homepage to be crystal clear on who we serve, who we do not serve, showcase as much of our personal style as much as possible on a cold website that you're looking at for the first time, and also talk about pricing and deliverables. Actually, and our website does our homepage goes against some common usability practices. There's way too many words on there. It does require people to read what's there and not spend the typical 10-second quick judgment and be gone. That's okay with me, because the folks that we are working with now, because we're niching down more into intricate, complex website builds, AI and these other things like Squarespace and Wix, we're not really in competition with those. Of
course.
And so when you're looking at that homepage and you're realizing they build complicated stuff, that's why the price tag is higher than the majority of these do-it-all agencies. Here's what the price tag is, and here's a handful of videos of Chris and a handful of the team members kind of talking about their process in their style, in their offices, using their webcams that you will see them on. They're not these professionally done videos where you're like, okay, they look really cool now because a professional video company did it. Like, no, you're getting like, this is, if you're talking to me, you're seeing me here. Right. If you're talking to Daniel, you're seeing him on the website in his space. And so why not showcase all of that so there's less of the shock factor? Like, it's like when you meet somebody in person for the first time after seeing them on video, there's that like, oh crap, you're taller, you're shorter than I thought you would be, the whole 9 yards. Well, if you have a website that's chock full of professionally made videos in completely different settings, and then you meet somebody virtually, because we all know 95% of our meetings now are virtual. Yeah. There's that shock factor. It's not that highly tailored professional stuff. It's, oh, this is webcam Chris. I didn't know what webcam Chris was going to look like and sound like. So you remove one of those shock factors from the mix, and that's a big piece of that.
Now, the vibe check, just in case people are not going over right now, right this second, to classiccity.com, assuming, like Chris said, it's still there. It is 2 minutes. It is a grand total of 2 minutes. In that 2-minute video, there is education, qualification, and a little bit of invitation, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And you can do this lots of ways. You chose to do it with video. I think that stands out. And that really, really stands out. Then you, of course, have the red light, green light game, right? You're typically not a fit to work with us if boom, boom, boom. And you are a great fit to work with us if bam, bam, bam. How many bad fit prospect calls did it take for you to put that up on the website?
So I've been doing this since 2004. Now that's obviously counting middle school age and high school age time. That went live on the website at some point early 2025.
Nice.
So do the math on that. It took a hot minute. And what I've also realized as well, obviously nobody ever reads every single thing on there. I've ended up starting a lot of my calls very bluntly and honestly, being like, hey, you're calling for a website thing. What I want to do is I want to zoom out with you. I want to talk about what is your overall marketing strategy. Because if people say they don't have a marketing strategy, they probably don't need an intricate website and spending a ton of money on it.
Yeah.
So tell me about what your annual plan is for marketing strategy. How are you envisioning the website working into that strategy? And then once I have the answers to those two questions, I then know whether or not people are going to want to spend above the line or below the line, and even if they wanted to spend above the line of where, into the range of prices that we work, if they're not going to be updating it and using it, I'm going to hardcore push them to a cheaper option with one of our partners, because there's typically a lot of sadness when you are spending the amount of money that you're expecting to, but then you're not using it as much as you did. And there's a lot of buyer's remorse. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
And so it has been very helpful. I like to cut to the chase very quickly.
I think people make two mistakes when they're looking at their website. Number one, it's they buy too big, right? It's a fairly simple thing, but they figure, hey, the more I spend, the better the website must be. So they either overspend or they underspend. Underspending is where they kind of hit that ceiling of complexity. As you say, the website is now the bottleneck. And they go, oh, crap. We thought we'd go cheap, or we didn't know what we didn't know. We need a much more robust, much more functional, capable, e-commerce-ified or lead capture mechanism type of website that has a lot of depth, maybe some back-end programming, et cetera, et cetera. When people hit that ceiling and they go, okay, let's say we're a fairly new company. We're in business for 3, 4, or 5 years. We thought our website was good enough, and now it's becoming a giant pain in our ass. What kind of diagnostic questions do you typically ask, Chris, to really pinpoint that bottleneck, or what kind of bottleneck they're experiencing? Give us an example of a couple of different kinds of bottlenecks.
Yeah, so there's two primary ones, and there tends to lean one direction most of the time. Bottleneck number one is technological. It's your company has gotten more complex. You have a lot more third-party connections that are going into the site. Maybe when you built it, you didn't have a CRM. Now you do have a CRM, and your CRM setup is robust. It's not like you're doing, 2 deals a month. You're doing 30, 40, 50. And so you need pipeline management and the website to interact with it well, things like that. That's side number one. It's the technology piece. It's typically not that. The side that it typically sits on is that the website drifts over a period of months or years, especially, and this is especially true when there's a CMO or VP of marketing and that person has a handful of people underneath them. And what happens when a website's built, there's a core button style. We're going to pick on buttons here for a second.
Sure.
And the website was built, it was launched, and every button was green with like a little bit of rounded edges to it, and the font was bold. And then somebody comes in a month later and they drop a button on the page, and they're having to go through and set all the settings. And this time they forgot to make the edges rounded. The font is bold, the button's green, but now the edges aren't rounded. And then a couple months later, somebody is putting, like header text and paragraph text, and somebody forgets that there's like an actual header tag. So they for the header, they take the paragraph and they just go and manually increase the font size to make it larger. And you slowly start drifting away. And I call that design drift.
Yeah.
And when those small things compound over time, the symptoms are people don't like working in the website anymore because they're working with a blank white screen and nobody has any idea of how to make a page look decent.
Yeah.
And there wasn't, at the beginning of the day, there wasn't a block library created that has the 10 to 15 to 20 building blocks that are pre-styled, on brand, perfectly structured, completely responsive, accessible as well, that people could then just be like, okay, cool. I'm going to build a page. I got 15 choices to choose from, and I probably need about 5 of these to make it work. Right. And now you drag those puzzle pieces on the page, and now the creative juice that you have to expend is not in design and layout and colors and fonts and all that jazz. It's just in writing the words.
Yeah.
That's it. And then now your website can last you so much longer because everything stays consistent. And there's a library of stuff that's easy to use. And that's where we see the symptoms on our website has gotten complicated. We've added so many pages. Everything is disparate. We actually need more of some dynamic interconnectivity. Like, let's say it's an agency, they need a case study to connect with a couple of testimonials, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And they don't want to have to input that case study content on every new page that they create, that they put it on there. They want to insert it one time and be done.
Yeah.
And so when sites scale like that very unnaturally, there's a lot of manual entry, and wanting to automate some of that entry and making things connect well and easily stay on brand.
Let's talk about, you mentioned it briefly, but I think this is very much worth talking about. You put your pricing in ranges, but you put your pricing loud, proud, and crystal clear on the website. There are schools of thought, professional services, agency, schools of thought that say, no, this needs to be value-based pricing. Someone comes to you and, typical job A for one client might be $25,000. Same exact job for a company 10 times its size should be $100,000. So value-based pricing, price the client, not the work. You say, listen, this type of project is between X and Y. This kind of deal is between Y and Z. What was the thought process? And I'm also curious about, were there any fears around putting crystal clear price ranges out there in public?
Honestly, I wanted people to know ahead of time that they were not the right fit. It was because most people that see that and they think, okay, cool. That's a great signifier for us. Like, if they've made it past that and they're still scheduling a meeting, they've at least somewhat become a lot more qualified. And we still get people that submit forms and reach out to us that fall below that pricing. And we have pricing questions on our contact forms and things like that. And so that it sets the stage for what type of conversation we're going to have.
Right.
And I love connecting folks. I'm a people person at the end of the day. And chances are, if you want to talk about website problems, I will probably talk with you about them, even if we're not going to be the right fit and get you connected to the right person.
Yeah.
But there was honestly zero fear in that at all, because I was spending a lot of time going through multiple meetings with people before we even got to the budget question. Yeah. And I got tired of that, in all honesty. Yeah. I was like, you know what? Some of our best relationships that we've ever had, one of the first questions out of the gate is like, you're thinking about a website. You have some kind of a budget. And what I'll actually end up doing on a lot of these calls is we have, buckets and ranges, right? I have a slide that I show where it's like low, middle, high. We don't call them that, but that's where they are. And there's ranges underneath each of those. And a lot of it is about mostly content and interconnectivity. And that's really the two primary levers that we pull. And I kind of list out within each of those, like, this is like, the different levels of complexity for sites. Yeah. And rather than asking people to say, give me a number, I ask them to point to which of these feels the most right for them. And it takes a little bit of the pressure off of being able to say, like, no, my budget is X.
Yeah.
But now we're talking about a range, and if that range feels good. And in all honesty, we did that recently, and it disqualified somebody very quickly. They're like, yeah, we can't do that. And I was like, that sounds great. I'll put you in touch with somebody, or if you don't want me to, that's also fine.
Yeah.
And so we saved 8 to 12 hours of proposals and meeting time and cut it down to 15 minutes. It was great.
Exactly. Here's another agency, holy grail kind of thing. Monthly recurring revenue. So far, what we've heard is you build these amazing websites, you hand over the keys to the kingdom, you say, CMO, here's for your team, here's how to make updates, here's your block library, good luck, hasta la vista, thanks for playing, it was a pleasure doing business with you. A lot of agencies say, oh my God, that's totally not the right model. You have to do ongoing consulting. You have to have, all of these different monthly recurring revenue, charge $2K a month for this and $10K a month for this and $3K a month for that. And, you need to keep clients for life. There are clients, I'm sure, that come in, you do a big, beautiful website rebuild, they're super happy, they ride off into the sunset. Yeah. But you do have some ongoing programs. Tell us how those work and tell us kind of what does that sales conversation sound like to determine need and fit for the long-term collaboration?
Yeah, and so like you said, we provide all the education. That is one thing that we're a huge proponent of, is that so many of the horror stories, maybe not all of them, but so many of them have centralized around the fact that team members don't know how to use a site. And so we started recording videos and embedding all those videos directly on the back end of the site. So nobody has to go and find the email from that, developer named who from 2 years ago. Like, no, it's just all right there. And so with that being said, there's a couple of schools of thought. It's interesting, because when you don't necessarily go to market as a retainers company and you build great websites and you have a good personality and everything goes well, people want to continue working with you. Shocker. So by not marketing it, it actually helps leads come in for that type of work when the project is finished. But we've realized that for a long period of time, and again, part of this was during the period of when we were doing other marketing services on top of web, is that it was highly commoditized work back during that time. Like for us, because we were doing a little bit of social and a little bit of ads and a little bit of web. And like I was talking about before, there wasn't that tie together to see how it all worked well in tandem. And over that period of time, some of our best clients were the ones that had a robust website. They had a marketing plan, but they needed somebody to come and consistently design out new building blocks for their site and then develop those out. They didn't look to us for the strategy behind how marketing is running. They came to the table with that, and they're like, hey, we have this marketing plan. It's going to take 4 pages. We think we need some new building blocks to make them happen. And then we would come to the table with, I love your strategy. Here's how we're going to implement that on your site. And then we design the new elements, we develop them out. Those have been fantastic. And so that's where we merge more into that retainer and longevity route, is when that CMO or VP of marketing has a robust site and a robust marketing plan, and their site does actually need to grow, not just in SEO content, but the feature set that it has to give their team to be even more robust long term. And that has been a lot of fun for our entire crew.
Holy smokes, so much value in this episode. Listen, if you are loving what you're hearing, feel free to download, subscribe, tell a friend, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to The Selling Show. Now, back to the interview. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the evolution from Chris doing this solo, high school, college, Scholastic Book Fair. I'm curious, who was your first hire and how did that feel? And then now you've got like a dozen people, right? You have a whole bunch of folks. What was your evolution as a leader? But first, tell me about that first hire. And it's like, okay, this is not just the Chris show. This Chris needs a little bit of a crew, and I'm going to start by hiring this person.
I had a handful of contractors that I worked with, and they were mostly specialists. I had a really great dev who still works with me today. And he was my like, oh crap, Andrew, I need to get this done. Please help me. And would just knock it out of the park. And to this day, still does that. And so I had a handful of those folks, but then I realized at one point, it was probably around when we eclipsed the like $200,000 a year mark, where my inbox was getting just, I couldn't keep up with, because there was a lot of projects. I couldn't keep up with every email, and it wasn't huge projects. It was all like small to middle size. So there was a lot of noise coming in, and I hired somebody who I've known for a long time, a good friend. And I hired her for a handful of reasons. One is I am a very introverted person. She is highly extroverted. And so my network grew very slowly. So my thinking was, she enjoyed the idea of the sales process and things like that. I was like, if she could take some of these emails off of my plate, she's an extrovert, she's a people person, she can just do a little bit of the project management and keep everything organized, and also go out and shake some hands and kiss some babies. That little bit of time for her would probably really exponentially get us to move up quickly. It will free my time to do more development and design work and still be the leader of this small little nimble crew. And that lasted about 3 years. Over those 3 years, this was kind of like phase one of the business actually growing from 2016 to 19. Brought her on. And then the next thought, and I didn't have a lot of, the next thought I had was different, because I wasn't at that point surrounded by a lot of agency leaders who I could bounce ideas off of that have been farther along than me. I was really still very siloed and not really knowing what to do. And one of the things that she and I talked about was like, hey, you're doing dev work and design work. If we can get a developer and a designer to take all that work off your plate, you and I could go sell together and basically sell and project manage. And I was like, that sounds like a great idea. So what do you do when you have money in the bank to spare? You just go hire more full-time employees. Not the best idea, mind you, especially not without good mentorship surrounding you. And so what was interesting about 2016 to 19, and I didn't have the knowledge to even look at this, was that, we had our bank account, and month number one, all the salaries went out. But then when all the invoices got paid, we didn't reach that original mark. We reached $1,000 less.
Ooh.
Then all the salaries went out and all the invoices came in, and we were now $1,000 less than that. So it was this like weird roller coaster where if you looked at a trend line, we were going down, but it never felt like that because it was only just, the bank account was just a little bit smaller than it was the month before. And we had accounts receivable. We're doing good. And that slow roller coaster happened to where we hit, and every founder has their story of had $5 in the bank account and payroll to hit and begging people to come pay invoices. And so that was the 2016 to 19 kind of roller coaster down. And I realized at that point, we let everybody go, or they left. I have one person who stuck it out with me. She did invoicing part-time. And I was like, I have no money to pay you. We will get more money in, but the next month or two, I can pay you for like an hour a week to keep the invoices going out. I was like, if you want to go find another job, God bless, I will write you the best recommendation letter and make all the introductions. She stuck through it with me. And she now works full time and directs all of our operations at this point. So things worked out. The thing that I learned the most was I needed to have more people in my life that had been farther along than me much earlier on. And I didn't know that I was missing that.
So important. Was it a situation also where, and a lot of people fall into this trap, revenue might even have been going up, but your profit is going down / negative? Right? It's like, oh, we actually, we sold more last month than the month before, but now we're $3,000 behind, not 2. And the next month, money goes up again. Now we're $4,000 behind, not 3. And it's like, the revenue line goes like this, the profit line goes like that, because of course the drain, you can't outfly the drag, to use aeronautical terms.
Hey, right, exactly. So those 3 years in particular, 16 through 19, revenue didn't really grow. We kind of kept it the same, which was a problem. So we could have survived that if we had a better pulse on the actions we were taking were not leading to new sales. Because that decline was so slow, it could have very easily been remedied by a handful of new contracts every year.
Interesting.
And it wouldn't have been the most profitable thing in the world, but it would have lasted. That phase of the business would have lasted a lot longer.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, what were some of the wasted time, wasted effort activities that did not result in new sales?
I was actually thinking about this recently, and I'm actually going to take your question and pivot it a little bit, because what I've realized is a lot of those efforts that were put in back then are paying dividends today. And that's been kind of our company's MO for our whole livelihood has been play the long game, play the brand awareness game, meet all the people and provide value to all those people.
Yeah.
Because our core marketing motions have just been, Chris, go talk to people. You build trust and rapport with folks like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people that Jessica, the first person that I hired, met up with back in those days at 2016 and 19 were folks that, looking back at kind of the trail of like, oh, we know Bob. Where did Bob come from? Larry. Where did Larry come from? And, it all kind of roots down to some of those initial people that she met. And so we just didn't do enough of that. And we also did not ask for the sale quickly. And we still have that problem to a certain extent of, we have a lot of people in our network and a lot of good people that trust us and respect us.
Yeah.
But getting to that more sales oriented conversation drags. And so that's one of the things that we're actively working on fixing right now.
Fantastic. As we're landing the plane, you have the world's largest microphone right now to talk to every CMO and every VP of marketing. What advice would you like to give them about websites and how and where to invest for their future success?
Websites have this historical track record of being redone every couple of years or so. 2 to 3 years is kind of the average. And that doesn't have to be the case. And it all goes back down to that whole design drift methodology of things, is when you're going about that next redesign, whenever that happens, come at it the way you go after your brand. When you work on a rebranding, you talk about what is the different brand components of our library that we have. How can we utilize our logo? What are the different, what are base level, print material structures? What do those look like? What do our sales presentations look like? What structure do we follow so that we're not reinventing the wheel for every sales presentation that we do? And the website just typically gets cobbled together in some way, shape, form, or fashion. But if you take that same concept of that design library and you think, how are we building the 10, 15, 20 different components that are on brand, and our team is educated long-term, not just with a live training session, but with a library of training videos attached to all that, your website can last you 8, 9, 10 years. Recently, we built a site before we even had a lot of these processes put into play. We built a site back in 2015, and that site lasted. We built a new marketing site for it in 2024. And that sucker lasted, stayed on brand, and stayed well structured for 9 years. And sure, 9 years, there's a lot of duct tape at that point. Any website will have duct tape, especially one that's complex with e-commerce, with custom integrations and things like that. But from a marketing perspective, all their pages looked very similar to one another. They all looked identical, and it had different people that were non-technical, non-designers managing that site, and it worked well for them.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go through this every few years.
The game you've been playing ain't necessarily the game that you could be playing at a much higher level with much less headache, heartache, and a lot more simplicity.
Exactly.
So now, where can people go to get connected and stay connected to more Chris LaFay brilliance? Website, I think there's a secret goodie that we may have for people, but where would you like to send people to connect more with you?
So I post a ton on LinkedIn all about website stuff. So connect with me, Chris LaFay. My name is unique. I'm pretty sure I'm the only Chris LaFay on LinkedIn. Challenge me on that one later. And yes, we're actually actively productizing one of the services that we have. And so at the time of this recording, that page does not exist, but maybe by the time that it releases, that link will be in the show notes. And so take a look at that. But also you can hit up classiccity.com as well too, to view all the little tips and treats that we talked about that were on the homepage now, may or may not be there, because we test things out and we update them and try new things.
That's right. If you see something completely different, like what the hell was Newman asking about? Like, that's not there. That's not, what the hell's going on? So you're going to go to this episode at thesellingshow.com. Immediately below are going to be links to whatever website Chris is running at that point, and the special secret link that might not be there, but it might be there. It's probably there, depending on when you're watching and listening to this. And Chris LaFay, you are a rock star. So smart. Thank you for all the value that you dropped here today.
Of course. And hey, the whole like selling, you got to add a little bit of intrigue to it. And that's what we're doing right now.
This is it.
It's like we know what we're doing.
Method. That's it, buddy. All right. Thank you again. And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.